what we say about her.
Yeah. Yeah, it's being recording, and we will share all the audience, the participants, and the following us on YouTube channel about this event minutes, and also we'll share with them. I have requested for email ID. We'll share them with dual logo, the certificate of participation.
So there are some more people coming. Tanvir is also here. Hello, Tanvir.
Yes, ma'am. How are you? First of all, I really am very sorry to hear about your injuries, and inshallah, you will recover.
Good afternoon.
It's both Tanvirs, but it's beautiful. Mr. Hussain, wonderful to greet you.
One from Saudi Arabia and one from Bangladesh. So, two Tanvirs. Yes, please.
Yeah, nice meeting you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm sorry,
also...
I was a bit confused about the time. I thought it is 5 p.m. CET, so.
Thanks for letting me know. Yes, indeed. We had that. On LinkedIn was 3 p.m. Berlin time, and also on the first poster I shared, Tanvir, there was written on 3 p.m. Berlin time.
No, I'm sorry for that.
No worries. You can jump in then later for your speech once you're home. And I think we anyway will start with Professor Dr. Phoebe Kanduri, who is joining in from New York City. And since you are a let's say, needed person for all kind of events, we are so grateful to have you here. Yeah, please, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Indeed, it's hectic here in New York for UNGA and the Climate Week, and I'm really happy to talk to you today because it's Peace Day, and peace is the crucial prerequisite for anything else that we humans try to do. There is no sustainability, there is no resilience, there is no humanity, there is no society, economy of nature without peace. Peace is what preserves all of this, and war is what destroys this interaction between nature, economy, and society that we live on, and we try to put it on a sustainable pathway. It is important to understand that peace is not easy. It's not easy to bring peace to the world. It's not easy to bring peace to a community, a society, an economy, a country. It's not easy. And we should work on peace as hard as the devastating negative consequences of wars are. So always when we are working for peace, we should keep in mind that if we do not work for this, if we do not work for peace, then the alternative, which is war, is devastating, destroys everything, destroys human lives, distracts the economy and the society, demolitions this economy and the society, and destroys heavily nature. So it is important to work on peace as much as we work on anything else. Now, my work is about innovative systems transformation. My professorship sits between the School of Economics at Athens University and the Department of Earth Sciences at the University of Cambridge. And I do a lot of work through the Alliance of Excellence for Research and Innovation on IFORIA into constructing, developing systems of transformations for the sustainable interaction between nature, economy, and society. Even the way we work, the institutions that come under IFORIA, which are institutions that I lead or direct or co-chair or I'm the president of, even this shows that it is important to have peace. Why? Because under peace, collaboration flourishes. And it is collaboration that brings solutions, because we need critical mass of expertise, technology, fiscal financial instruments, building up capacity, and we need co-design. We need to co-design our solutions. And only through peace we can do this. We need collaboration and co-design. And there is no other way to support our existence on this globe. So in what we do, we also do a lot on food systems and the greatest nexus of water, food, and energy. And I think it is quite crucial that we get that sustainable interaction between water, food systems, and energy correct in order to be able to feed our people, in order to be able to feed them in a healthy way, in order to be able to feed them in a sustainable way over the long run, given the current crisis of climate change, which increases droughts, it increases floods, increases extreme weather events that have a heavy toll on our ability to produce food, plus the biodiversity crisis, the collapse of our biodiversity, of our ecosystem, which again has a very heavy toll on our ability to produce food. Our operations are global. Only in gray countries we don't work. And again, this is about collaboration and coordination and bringing everybody together to a common cause of peace and sustainable pathway where all the people that are born in peaceful and collaborative countries have the means to live a respectful life and dream about their future and the future of their kids. And all these things we discuss in all the high-level forums that we go across the world. But it seems that it is not enough for peace. For peace, you need leadership, you need peace leadership, you need peace leadership at the multilateral institutions, but not only that, you need peace leadership at the national level. And peace leadership means that you are have assigned to the goal of keeping war away, and then you work consistently and robustly to get the pathways of your people and your country on a sustainable path so that they have enough food, enough resources, enough vision for a good future. They believe in the possibility of a flourishing future to actually be implemented. And in that way, geopolitical pressures come down. In that way, any kind of conflict pressure comes down. So I've been assigned a month ago by the UN General Secretary to lead the Global Sustainable Development Report. This report happens every 4 years, and this one will be the last one. It will come out 2027, and in a way, it will define the future of the SDGs after 2030 deadline of UN Agenda 2030. I am co-chairing this group of 15 eminent scientists. We already had a number of country briefings, member state briefings about what the member states want to see in this report, which is an assessment of our current status in sustainability, but also a list of success stories and a list of success tools and instruments that allow us to move faster towards sustainability, and also a big chapter on the way forward after 2030, what we should do. I want to quickly say a few other things. Now, the SDGs, we know, we scientists that built the SDGs and the multilateral world that built the SDGs, that is a brilliant, comprehensive framework. And we also know that we have the knowledge, the science, the technology, the policies, even the financial resources in the blend of public and private finance to achieve the SDGs. And we know that the SDGs are crucial for our survival. We know that they are important. We know that if we are unsustainable, we cannot survive as a human being, or we will have a very difficult survival. Yet the implementation of the SDGs is very low. And the issue is why? Why? For me, the key challenge is the lack of accountability within the multilateral system, which is itself in a crisis. We don't have an institutional structure that is explicit on driving the implementation of the SDGs at scale. We need an operational structure capable of aligning global efforts, ensuring effective coordination, and delivering results on the ground. And this will channel all the technology transfer, financial flows, and capacity buildings that is needed to get the implementation happening. So until now, we know what we want, what we need to do, implement the SDGs. Now we need to identify the how we implement the SDGs. And the how is about measurement. The first step is measuring the performance against the SDG. We need continuous monitoring and assessment. And we do that in the Sustainable Development Report of the United Nations, in the Sustainable Development Report of the UN Sustainable Development Solutions Network that I lead, the Global Climate Hub, a network of 2,000 institutions across the world. I also lead the European Hub. If you look here, food systems, which are included in land use SDG 15, but also SDG on water, are really in a bad shape. We are underperforming with regards to our food systems, and we have starvation, we have hunger, we have countries that don't have hunger or starvation, but they have very unhealthy diets. And if you look at the different systems, how reds or orange, which means below 50% implementation. It is also this low food system implementation SDG is also pictured in the land use SDG 15, which is the third graph, mostly red across the globe. And then, of course, marine systems also produce food, very important source of food for many countries and populations around the world, also full of red. And then the other systems, the climate system and the water system, who are both on crisis, further aggravate the negative situation. So we know we are not on track. We know that there was some progress, but we are not on track. And we know what we need to do in order to get on track. We need science-based transformative pathways for SDGs implementation and co-design of these pathways so that are implemented. And this is what we do in the Global Climate Hub. We understand the importance of the SDGs. This is an integrated framework, a holistic framework. So we analyze in interactive, integrated mode all the systems of our economy, the climate, the energy, the transport, the land use, the marine use, the food system, the health system, the innovation system, embed them in socioeconomic financing mode. And at each stage of analysis, at each stage of mathematical analysis, we integrate the beliefs, visions, needs, preferences of the stakeholders. At the end of the day, there is a platform that brings all the data together, the mathematical modeling, the views of the stakeholders, and then produces tools that stakeholders can use. Stakeholders, ministries, politicians, NGOs, businesses, financial institutions need tools in order to design this complicated optimal mixture of solutions, financial solutions, fiscal solutions, technological solutions, capacity building solutions, governance transformation solutions, digital twins, visualizations, tools, and so on. And we produce reports, and these reports are communicated in stakeholder groups and again discussed, put in public consultation, and so on. So food systems, to go back to food, which is the theme of the day, and I hope to finish in 2 or 3 minutes, are very important. They feed our population, but they are also the driver of biodiversity loss, land use conversation, and sustainable freshwater use. They are responsible for 1/3 of total greenhouse gas emissions. And it is important to meet global targets for food security, biodiversity, conservation, freshwater use, climate emissions, greenhouse gas climate emissions. So we need to develop food and land use policies that amplify cross-sector benefits and minimize the trade-offs. And we, as mathematical economists and engineers, have developed many models, integrated assessment models for the interaction of the nexus of water, food, and energy. And through the integration of socioeconomic and biophysical data, we try to provide a holistic understanding of how policy interventions may influence food systems, climate outcomes, and land use. An array of many projects under the Alliance of Excellence for Research and Innovation that I direct will bring out the results that I'm gonna show here. So it's all about integrating food modeling, water modeling, land use modeling, energy modeling, and simulating under different scenarios. Here we have the business as usual scenario and the scenario with the government commitments with regards to climate, with regards to emissions, with regards to agriculture, with regards to water use. And at the end of the day, this tool that we are using is allowing us to simulate land use, agriculture, food systems, forestry, bioenergy scenarios, climate, biodiversity, and food security targets and demographic assumptions. So at the end of the day, you have a direction for each and every country, and these are our recent results that have been published in the report that we are launching at the Climate Week about Europe, the Balkans, and the UK. What are the necessary land use changes to achieve national commitments, to achieve the targets of greenhouse gas emissions? What are the changes of production costs, farming employment, and so on? And what is important to understand here is that these recommendations about food production in the agriculture sector are not a standalone siloed report on agriculture and water and food. No, they are integrated into LEAP, which is the energy system solutions, into water requirement system modeling, into biofuel production system modeling, into land requirement system modeling, into even climate resilience and adaptation interventions for floods and droughts. So what I'm saying is that it is important to get sustainable pathways to reach a point where you can really feed your people in a healthy way and produce an economy and society that is flourishing to avoid a crisis and pressures that might lead you to war. But it is a very difficult and detailed exercise, and it is even more difficult to implement. To implement, you also need the finance. And to get the finance, first you have to be explicit on the value of all the resources that you are using. Don't forget the value of natural capital. Don't overuse natural capital. Don't degrade natural capital. And then what we do is we put all of this in a general equilibrium analysis, which answers the question, who will finance this? Where is the money coming from? And how you build packages of measures to care for the vulnerable. And if you don't have the fiscal space because you are in a developing country, a country at default, then how we restructure the global financial architecture in order to streamline to you the financial resources that you need. And this is exactly what we discussed at the Financing for Development UN Sevilla conference, different instruments, mechanisms, and approaches that can redesign the global financial architecture and get the 30 trillion of savings every year streamlined to the countries that need it more, to the places that need it more. And at the same, these are the places that will produce higher growth, because you can not achieve rates of growth like you can achieve in a developing country if you invest in low-cost finance and long-run maturities, and you get the country from stagnation to an increasing growth rate. And with this develop tools that allow you to easily navigate. Sorry about this. To easily navigate sources of financing instruments and best practices. I am closing everything with one slide, capacity building. We have, in order to implement all of this, irrespective of how well you design it, and irrespective of whether you have the technology, the solutions, the governance, the finance for all of this, you cannot do anything unless you have the skills in the labor market, in your labor market. We have designed an Euphoria AI skills tools that allows you to import in this tool any law, regulation, policy, any direction of transformational change, and then identify as an output of this tool the skills and occupations that you need in order to implement the law or the regulation of the policy. And then look into your labor market and see how much of these skills and occupations you have. And whatever you don't have, the tool directs you to courses that are open access and can upskill and reskill around the world. Worrying point, we've done this for Europe, for the skills and occupations needed for the implementation of European Green Deal. And we find that 85% of jobs needed for the sustainability transition embedded in the laws and policies of the European Green Deal are not yet in the labor market. The situation in the global south is much worse. So let's look forward to really invest seriously in capacity building to raise the chances of implementing the SDGs and co-design our future forward. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you very much. And really very knowledgeable and very good knowledge from Dr. Phoebe, Professor Dr. Phoebe, and I appreciate your presence. And Isabel, we all were wanting to listen Phoebe, and it's awesome. Every time, it's great knowledge and how to move with food for peace. Whatever we speak on, and when you get the inputs, she is there, and it's really very interesting. Yeah, please.
Phoebe, do you have 5 minutes more for questions, or do you have to jump out?
I have, of course.
So if someone has a question, go ahead and raise your hand. I have so many in my mind already. Like you answered a few along the way, like, okay, Europe is already doing the skill assessment, which I like very much. And there are some discussions about it in the European Climate Pact. Maybe there are some co-creation possibilities. I've seen several topics in the forum, several teams circling around the topic of education, and also in the State of the Union from Ursula von der Leyen. It was a big topic of reskilling, right? And bringing the people from like steel and old industries into the new ones. So very, very good insights.
And Horizon initiative, DG Research and Innovation under Horizon gives hundreds of millions for projects on upskilling, reskilling, capacity building, creating courses, open mass courses, creating in co-creation mode, learning packages at different ages, at different levels. So there is a lot of activity in Europe on that, and I think it's so important.
It is so important. Can I ask you, what do you think about, like you mentioned already, it's open source, this AI you can use, for example.
Yeah.
How is it with the learning? Can everyone around the world make use of the learning?
I think this is one great possibility that digitalization is giving us. Education is the highest growth activity. It is documented in the economic literature, and speaking as an economic, there is nothing you can do as a person or as a nation in order to increase your income and in order to increase the growth of your country, like education. Education is number one. Nothing has higher return. This is sure. But education is expensive. It's expensive. It's very expensive in the developed world. It is also expensive in the developing world, and it is definitely very expensive if they're going to do it within their fiscal space. They don't have the money. So it is important to channel money for education in the developing world, but it is also important to make use of this huge capacity that AI and digitalization is giving us. In SDSN, we have SDG Academy, for example, with hundreds of courses on all the aspects of sustainability with top-level people of the world. And this can be taken by anybody. But this digitalization, which is easy to use at university level or secondary school level, let's say, it is not very easy for primary school. There you need a combination of physical and virtual, and it is these interesting possibilities and capacities that we need to explore in order to get as much as we can with regards to education and skills in the countries of the developing world. So we need finance to build the schools and pay the teachers, and we need quality education, and we need every kid at school at least for 10, 12 years, and we need to nourish the capacity of digitalization and AI. All these have to happen together. If you get every kid at school, you increase your growth potential exponentially, you increase his or her own income by 10% for each additional year in school. But most importantly, you are able to keep this person away from crime, away from extreme groups. You are able to help this person use his creativity in a constructive way, in a way that is sustainable for his welfare and the welfare of his community.
That's wonderful. And I think there are several people here, like also Tanvir, like the other time, like the one from Bangladesh, the climate diplomat. I'm not sure he's here, who will also go into science and education, starting something here right now. And thank you so
Just
much.
give me 2 more minutes. I'll be entering home now. Just 2
Okay,
more minutes.
perfect.
Yeah.
One
I'm
more
enjoying
question
the
from mine.
Yeah.
If nobody else has a question, please raise your hand, right? If you also have one for Phoebe. I have one more. Like, you are so well known about innovation. You have seen many innovation, I can imagine. Do you have a food innovation in mind, which is maybe good to know for the other around the world, like some food innovation or other innovation you would like to share, which you have seen, which is maybe really, really good, which you think?
Well, we have many on the water, food, energy nexus. For me, coming from an arid region, a region that is being troubled with droughts, most of the most exciting innovations are innovations that have to do with either irrigation water, and there are so efficient technologies nowadays that allow you to use limited water resources to grow a variety of foods, of crops that can sustain a healthy and complete diet, and at the same time not use a lot of water, cultivate on not excellent soil, but medium quality soil, and even efficient if you don't have huge parcels of land for crop production. This is very important because if you have a technology that can be efficient, and I cannot name it now because it may be advertisement, but I can showcase I can send by email the array of technologies that we have on this. If you have an irrigation technology that is efficient, even on smaller parcels, is important because it allows you to preserve biodiversity. If what you have as a technology is efficient only if you have hectares and hectares of cropland, then in that efficiency, you lose biodiversity, which might be very serious and negative for the ecosystem that needs to sustain your crop production. So biodiversity and agriculture have a trade-off which can only be mitigated if your production technology is efficient at smaller scale. So we have such irrigation technologies that I think are very important. And also, again, driven from my arid background in terms of location, I also find fascinating the technologies for desalination. They are now so cost effective that if you are a coastal zone and you have serious urban drinking water deficiency. You don't have enough of this. It is really a cost-efficient solution when combined with interesting demand management. So there, in the urban water drinking situation, you see how governance, the decision on a technology, but also the decision for demand management through efficient and equitable pricing can bring together and balance on your drinking water, which is a major, crucial, basic need like food. So I usually like these solutions and these innovations that, of course, have a technological component, but they also have a societal and markets transformation component. I will share the website of our accelerator that is focusing on climate adaptation innovations, and there you have a big proportion of them focus on food and the water-food nexus.
Wow, thanks. It would be great if you can share the website. It's always good to have the solution spreading. And here are some other innovators in the room, which are also from the agriculture food, who will present. I guess you might have no time, but maybe later on you get in touch or you see it, the presentation, or you stay. Thanks for sharing. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question to Phoebe?
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sure.
Yes. So thank you so much for your presentation. I came in a bit late, so I didn't see all of it, but I really appreciated how you answered the questions at the end. My research is related to the water and energy nexus from desalination technology side. And I was just curious if you could talk a little bit more about the gaps that you see in the technology development when you look at technology and then you look at the use cases. Because what I've kind of seen is that there's technologies at this very small household scale, and there's technologies that are kind of at these very large, let's say, providing water for the entire city kind of scale. But the ones that might be needed in terms of small scale agriculture or are in terms of like community driven water, where there isn't those provisions right now, might be something more in that middle scale. So I guess I'm wondering, are there technologies that you've seen and you think it's much more of a implementation problem? Or do you actually see that there might be a gap in communication between what's needed and how to get there?
Okay, the gap, I'm not sure it is in, this is a great question. Thank you very much for asking it. And it comes from experience, because I can hear the experience in this, because it's a real problem what you're putting in. So desalination technologies can be either large scale or medium scale or small scale. And it's the decision of the scale, it's always a very difficult issue. Why? Because the scale of the technology has to be consistent with what you need. So if you are in a small village which is not densely populated, then you need a medium scale solution that can serve the whole of the village. And if I say small, I mean in terms of the ground, in terms of the space that is being captured by that village. If you are in a region of a country with major water issues, and you have the distribution of the population being uneven, then the efficient way to handle the problem is with satellite units. So you would get middle scale and satellite unit located in an efficient way from the different people and sectors and industries that it will serve. And then there are, in some cases, situations where the costing of the technology, that is the actual location of the production unit, the distribution network, and all that, becomes more efficient if you have a large-scale unit. So every time the cost of the production and distribution and network and the maintenance of that and the connection of that to the units, the households, the industries, and all of that has to be considered in parallel with the benefits of that, and identify the most cost-efficient, most equitable, and most robust in terms of future changes in the population and the extreme events and so on, structure that will serve you. Unfortunately, this is not how things are decided on the ground. Things are decided with big companies and smaller companies, and possibly corruption between state, the government, and the big companies, and vested interests. These are huge projects, very important projects for the economy of the country. There is a lot of competition for them. And at the end of the day, we end up having units, plants that are not of the efficient side. They are not located efficiently. They are not robust enough to external shocks. They are not flexible enough to changes in the population. And all of this creates so many misallocations that at the end of the day, the taxpayer or the multilateral institution that is fueling the money, or the blended finance between state, public money, and private money, are not serving the country, are not serving the people, and they are not making enough money either. So scale is a crucial issue and should be, and also the actual technology used for the desalination is a crucial issue for the cost of the whole plan, but also for the benefits it can potentially produce for the society.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your really in-depth answer.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Isabel, next, who is from the speaker side, and very grateful to the Professor Dr. Phoebe. I always learn whenever she comes join. And Gayatri, I always encourage the youth and you and the promising newcomers, the students, the new professional putting their starting their life, like the energy water nexus and desalination. And few years back, I worked with a local NGO and for desalination through solar. And I read in European magazine that they have developed a more efficient system with very less energy, and they can produce more sweet water. And it's looking, the future is evolving. Science is making its path, making its way. So thank you very much. And Isabel, next, we have Tanveer and also Aryan from as our speaker. And let's proceed so that our listeners and the live streaming can get more the beauty of the things in the food for peace.
And thanks a lot. So I think Aaron is next, if it's okay for you, Tanveer.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm good.
good. Then let's keep it a little bit shorter, else we sit here until 8 o'clock, but it's so interesting and insightful. So Aaron, let us know once you're ready.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay,
But it's
perfect.
very big. If you scroll out to 100% maybe, or you use the presentation mode to the...
I'm at 100%, so I'm a bit
Now,
surprised.
now,
Is that better?
it's okay.
Okay.
Yes, and then you choose on the bottom of the page on the right side is the sign which is next to your minus and plus, you know, and then you
Yeah.
start the presentation mode.
Okay, here we go. So I'm Erin, and I am really delighted to be here. And what I wanted to do was to quickly go through very at a lower level. So I really appreciated what Dr. Phoebe was talking about. I'm going to approach what we're talking about from a completely different perspective, looking at what individuals can do and communities, as opposed to dealing with the high level forums. So, so let me start, and I'll try and go fast so that everybody fits in. I want to talk about the essentials to growing healthy food, and this is what makes a peaceful and strong community. In general, water, rich soil, sunlight, healthy plants so that we can get healthy seeds, certain temperature ranges, and labor. Now, of course, some of those things are things that we can affect, and some are a little bit more difficult to affect, but not necessarily impossible. So I want to take you very quickly through this presentation. This is the water cycle, and this looks very complicated, but really what I want to show you is that this here, where you have evaporation from the ocean, condensation, and then rain falling down, that's called the large water cycle. There's not so much that we can do to affect that. But the small water cycle, which is evaporation from soil, transpiration from vegetation, and the rain that causes, is indeed something that can make a big difference to vegetation. So let's talk a little bit about that small water cycle to start with. There are 4 major levels of impact: at the leaf level, at the tree level, at the forest level, at the watershed level. And this is where things like biodiversity and how we decide to grow our food and the crops that we grow can actually make a huge difference to the amount of rainfall that we get globally. So at the leaf level, we're talking about very basic biological functions, transpiration, the bacteria that are found on the leaves and the fungi that are found on the leaves. They're also on the stems, on the fruits, on the soils. The temperatures will affect whether the stomata are fully open and closed. And as we probably learned at one point and maybe have forgotten, generally we're looking at optimum temperatures of between 15 and 35 degrees Celsius in order to get the most efficient production of sugars within plants through photosynthesis. So at the tree level, we're looking at things like Pseudomonas syringae. Now, this is a bacteria that acts as an ice nucleating particle, which sounds complicated, but actually what that does is it attracts water and it freezes it into clouds at a much higher temperature than what would normally happen in a pure water situation. And this gets a little bit confusing because you have to remember that we're at the below zero scale. So we're actually looking at negative numbers. So a warmer temperature is closer to zero. A colder temperature is actually further away from zero. Okay, so these are the little bacteria that are all over the trees. And at the tree levels, we also have roots that are pulling water up from the water table. In some respects, it's like a hydraulic function where if the water table isn't immediately reachable, you're going to have fungi, you're going to have roots going down to try and find the source of water so that the trees can function properly. Often what you'll see will happen is that if there are trees that are replanted in a landscape, you'll get the groundwater rising so high that streams that had dried up at one point will flow again. And I find that's a really, really beautiful showcase of the power of nature. Now, we were talking a little bit about the fungi and the bacteria covering all the different parts of the trees. What these do is they also emit volatile organic compounds, which are the communication signals that the plants use to warn each other that there are potentially certain threats. For instance, if you brush by a lavender bush, you'll smell the lavender. When you cut the grass, you'll smell that distinct odor. Those are actually from the volatile organic compounds. Now, what's the relevance to that? So, the relevance to that is that they all act as cloud condensation nuclei. So, when I said Pseudomonas syringae, this bacteria, can freeze at a higher temperature, I'm talking at about -2 to -8 degrees. I'm sorry? I'll keep going. So what this does is it produces light and local rains. Can somebody?
There's someone who has an open mic, and I see it
Yes,
here.
we have to off its mic. Yeah, please.
I did. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. So what these Pseudomonas syringae and fungi and other biological elements do is they create light and local rains, and they make low-level clouds that shade, but they don't retain the heat. So this is a really, really important function, because if you look at the other end and what a soot particle will do, which is also a cloud condensation nuclei, it will actually freeze water at -38 degrees centigrade. Now that means it's really high up in the atmosphere. And this rain that will fall because of the condensation will actually fall hundreds or thousands of kilometers away from where the particle actually went into the sky. So it's affecting countries that are way, way, way far away. It's producing cirrus clouds, which are very high atmospheric clouds, which end up blanketing the earth and keeping the solar energy inside. So those are causing heat. There we have the low natural biologically produced clouds that are perfect, and the carbon produced clouds that are causing us a lot of problems. A lot of people don't appreciate this. Here's just a photograph of water. It's actually pure water in the front, and the Pseudomonas syringae water, infected water in the back row. And you can see, I think this temperature was at -4 degrees, but don't quote me on that. So Pseudomonas syringae is actually used by ski resorts in order to make snow. And it shows you how effective this is. So let's move on to a forest level. You'll see these two pictures where there are clouds that have been generated because of all these cloud condensation nuclei and because of transpiration from a bunch of trees happening at a forest level. So what happens as well is that when you have the temperature dropping because you have the change of phase between water going from liquid water to water vapor, which is a gas, you end up with a temperature drop. And when you have the temperature drop, you always have a corresponding pressure drop in the same volume of air. So what this is doing is it's going to pull air from higher pressure areas to the lower pressure areas and create wind. And the wind increases the evaporation, of course, so you end up in this positive feedback loop. And what this does is actually amazing because it pulls water. If you look at these circles, these are where the major jungles and the major centers where this is happening. They pulls the water from the coasts into these centers. And if you notice, these centers where I've circled in red, they're actually a long way away from the ocean. So what this means is that ultimately we can influence the rain. If you look at the 70 years of research that was done by Milan, who was a Spanish fellow who did a lot of research in this area, he estimated that a wooden area that was 10,000 kilometers squared could exert enough impact to influence the rain. Now, to put this into perspective, it works the both ways. Brazil in 2023 lost 18,000 kilometers squared of forests, 44.4 thousand kilometers squared in 2024. And when we question why is Brazil and the surrounding areas, the surrounding countries suffering from drought, well, there's your answer. So this is just a highlight to show you very quickly of what this small water cycle is. So you can see in just above 2, the number 2, you've got the transpiration happening. You have the cloud condensation, bioprecipitation triggers that are forming clouds, and then they get swept over to where number 4 is. And the cycle repeats itself on and on and on and on, provided that the greenery is there. So let's move on to soils, because this is really my specialty and what I really love. In the past, we thought of soil as being parent materials, the sands, the silts, and the clays, and a layer of humus on top. Okay, and that was pretty well what we thought we had to work with. And so then we learned that the Haber-Bosch process could make nitrogen fertilizers, and we started to use that. But let's have a look at what has actually happened. So we went from getting crop production tons in all these areas in 1961. They were almost entirely higher than what they are in 2018. So I think this goes to show that maybe we're missing something. And what has happened in the meantime is that we have been using way more synthetic fertilizers. And the problem with this is that if we take a value of 11.8 tons of CO2 equivalent, which is actually what Yara had published as their output, and they're on the lower side. Some of the Chinese manufacturers are up in the 20s, but let's take 11.8 tons. It uses 11.8 tons of it uses for every 1 ton of production, the creation of 11.8 tons of CO2. And when we're looking at 20 million tons of fertilizer produced every year, this is creating 236 million tons of CO2 equivalent, just from the production of fertilizer. And so combining the two, we have to say there's a problem. What's missing? Well, the paradigm is shifting, and we're starting to understand now that maybe the most important element is actually life in the soils. So this is taken by, it's an idea that was developed by Elaine Ingham. The soil food web looks at how the base of the food chain, which is ultimately the photosynthesizer, so that's the plants, and that create the organic matter, how they are actually passing their energy through the food chain. How are they building life? It's through the fungi and through the bacteria that are at the second trophic levels that are actually cycling these nutrients. And here I wanted to show you a very quick video. This is a nematode. This is just a soil sample that I took. But one of the reasons that I love this is if you look over here, you can see the channels that have been created within the soil sample by this single nematode that's been making its way across. These channels are critical because these channels mean that there's oil, that there's air and water that can actually infiltrate into the soil. And those two elements are critical to building the proper life in the soil and critical to having healthy plants. I'm going to show you this. This is a photo of my compost, okay? So these are worms, the big ones, and the little tiny ones are called nematodes. And as you can see, there's a lot of action going on in this video. There's also some fungi in there. You can see different other being. Actually, it's a complete system within that. There's some testate amoebae that are here. There were some fungi before. There's one there, and it's just full of life. Now, here is soil that I took from a vineyard. There's nothing there. You can't see. And we're trying to grow food in this. That little springy coil thing is actually just it's not alive. It's just a piece of plant material. So this is at a higher level. You can see very little activity. There's some bacteria that's moving around, but that's it. This is what we would consider a dead soil. It doesn't have what it's necessary in order to cycle nutrients. And sadly, this is what I see when I look at almost every single soil that I look at. So, how does life help us to grow food? Well, we got to start with the basics. We have to start with the bacteria and the fungi and stop killing them. They have the highest concentration of nutrients within their bodies. The bacteria do. They have a C to N ratio of about 5:1, which is important because what it means is that when they're eating and they're pooping out, they are actually cycling all these excess nutrients. When they get eaten, their predators have too high a density of the nutrients, so those predators need to poop out the extra nutrients. And all this, of course, goes into the soil and can ultimately be taken up by the plants. On this photo, you can see little tiny oxalic acid crystals, and those are where the fungi store nutrients on their cell walls to keep them, to hold on so that they don't end up running off into the waterways when it rains. The fungi are also super critical because they transport water from an area that has more water to an area that has lower water, and they also act as super highways that bring bacteria back and forth as well. And then we saw the image of the nematode that was creating tunnels for air and water in the soils. It also happens with protozoa, and some higher order organisms like little mites and microarthropods and macroarthropods. So here's the thing. Do you remember this picture from the beginning when I was telling you about the Pseudomonas syringae bacteria? So these bacteria are actually targeted by a lot of our agricultural suppliers because they can cause problems within the soil and within plants. What they do is they can freeze the leaves and cause damage. But they're super important because these endophytes are the microorganisms that are living inside the plants and inside the soil that are going to help the plant to get what the plant needs in order to be the healthiest plant it can be. And of course, the plant has every amount of energy invested possible in creating seeds that are of super high quality. And so it will actually end up having a deficiency itself. That's one of the reasons sometimes we look at a plant and we might say, oh, the leaves are turning slightly yellow, or the veining looks a bit weird here. It's because the plant is lacking a nutrient. The nutrients have tried to go into the seed to maximize the chance of survival as much as possible. So when we're looking at the number of the total endophytes, we're looking at the seed endophytes, which are those organisms that have been put into the seeds, and those endophytes that are in the soil that are being absorbed. And in that case, your microbial diversity is absolutely critical because your plant needs to be operating at every different temperature range that it exists in at different oxygen levels, at different humidity levels. The permutations just go on and on and on. So how do plants actually get these nutrients? This is the coolest thing you may hear today. This is called rhizophagy, which means it's root feeding, okay? And what happens, you can see this little blue dot bit, okay? That is the bacteria that are being summoned by the plant root because of these plant exudates. The root exudates are these yellow blobs here of sugar and of organic acids and all sorts of things that the plant is going to put out in order to call the microbes. So these little blue microbes are the Pseudomonas syringae in a large extent. And remember, those are what we're trying to kill. So when we use a bactericide or we use something like a synthetic fertilizer that shuts down this process, we're actually preventing the plant from doing its job, which is to grow the best food and the best seed and be the healthiest it can be. So these little bacteria go into the root meristem here, and they lose their cell walls and become this thing called a protoplast, which is like a oozy thing full of this wall. So what happens when that occurs, which is due to the superoxide that the plant is putting out into its plant roots, the plant will then extract the nutrients that it needs, and very, very quickly it will clone all these protoplasts much faster than if they had an intact cell wall. So then the protoplasts get spat out through these hairs, and when they do that, the roots actually elongate and they will go in search of a slightly different place. The protoplasts get ejected, the cell walls reform, but there are many, many, many more of them, and then the whole cycle repeats itself. So you're getting into a positive feedback loop, where as a small plant, when it's putting out its roots, you might only have a few of these different bacterial types that are in the soil, that are in the seed. And as the plant is growing, it's actually multiplying these bacteria and all the life in the soil
Erin,
over and over and over again.
Erin, the
Yes.
time is running out. Do you want to make a
Okay,
point?
I'm
or
almost
like a
done. I'm
point?
almost done.
Perfect. Yeah, I
Almost-
guess there's so much.
almost done,
It's also
almost done.
interesting, but just mind the time.
Okay, so why do we need the endophytes? Because they're improving the stress tolerance, because they are pushing back pathogens, because they are increasing root development, nutrient absorption, making our food richer, more nutrient dense, and helping to carry forward the traits. Now, GMOs have weakened endophyte communities, and they require things like the synthetic fertilizer. So there's no reason that we need to be using them and encouraging them. So I'll leave it at this slide. These are what crops and better food. Okay, it's just a list of the most basic things, and their discussion. I want to encourage you to look under a microscope, see what is happening with your soils, allow that to dictate whether you decide to keep going with certain practices or to change what you're doing and perhaps try something new, because you may be pleasantly surprised.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much. I learned a lot. I have never had such a close look into soil, which was really, really insightful. And can we share the last slide as well with your recommendations to grow well food?
Yeah.
Perfect. That's basically one which we can really good share as well as solutions for the world. Thanks a lot, Erin. Maybe we keep it with the questions that they come to you personally on LinkedIn, or
No problem.
we do it in the
No
end.
problem.
just because we have a few more experts and you might like to hear them too. Yes, also from the agriculture field, where I will be also very interested to hear what they think about the solutions you have just shared. But first of all, we move on with Tanvir. Tanvir, thank you for being here again and being such a supporter of our peace initiative. Yeah, the stage is yours. And maybe you've been working as a diplomat.
Sure. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Sepal. Good afternoon to all. And I would like to say I'm fortunate to speak frankly now because of fall of a fascist regime in Bangladesh. Like even a year back, I'd not be able to speak frankly and in a candid manner. So, before I would like to, I listened to the wonderful and experts for last 1 hour. I have been also, enlightened. I would like to appreciate Erin and also Dr. Kanduri. So I'm sorry, my pronunciation might be not that perfect. Vaidma. Vaidma, is it okay? Vaidma and Dr. Kanduri. Um, yeah, I would like to touch a different angle or perspective. Yes, yeah, I was attending a meeting of diplomats last week on biotechnology, and there were discussions that, how the new government in Germany, the CDU, CSU led government, would like to see the uses of GMO. And I asked the questions to an MP that how they see it. The rise rate kind of disagreements globally across that planet and its impact on the EU. And the politicians always evade questions, and that questions was avoided. And also there was a scientist from German Ministry of Agriculture, and when I asked her the question and how you see the impact, because sometimes politicians they change the regulations, they change the policies to appease people, to also appease international businessmen. I would say now there is also kind of a lot of pressure on the present government of Germany to increase the German exports to the US and at least retain the export volume that Germans used to trade with the US. So there would be a compromise or trade-off call, like because the US government, their policy on GMO or or the biotechnology is different from German perspectives. So why I raise the issue? I'm raising the issue because political consensus is important. For example, we are talking about food for peace. Also, the people need to understand the politics. If the people are ignorant, I'm sorry to use that word, a strong word, or people are not enlightened, the politicians could get away with anything and everything. Like, in Bangladesh, what we had for last many years, I would say 15, 16 years. If we look into, the food policies, or if we look in the data of, food loss and wastage globally, which is a huge number. You would see a contrasting picture in developed countries. The food loss is exactly is at the downstream level, that consumer level, people waste a lot of food. In developing countries is more on the production, transportation, storage side. So if I bring the issue together for both countries, we need to have science diplomacy and transfer of technology in action. the food that is being wasted in the developed world could have been transported, because it is being wasted at the consumer level, at the retailer level. On the other hand, in our part of the world, it is not, it's a crop loss, it's a cropping level or upstream level. There is a missing point. We need to work on that how, both sides, global north and global south, because if I tell you the data, yearly per capita food loss is like, from online different verifiable sources, you can see 75 kilogram per capita in Germany. It's a lot. It's a lot. If you look it, it's a big number. If you want to know how Germans waste food, because it's 6 million countries. They have, for example, Japan 8 million, France 5 million, United Kingdom 5 million, Russia 4 million, right? United States 19 million tons. India 68 million tons, China 91 million tons. So those are big numbers. Those are in developing countries, those are upstream, developed countries, mainly downstream. If you want to know, okay, say for example, the carbon dioxide emission is also related. If you lose the food, for example, for New Zealand case, is 4.2 million ton of carbon dioxide in the lost food. Globally, we have a lot. Globally, 1.05 billion tons of food is being wasted or lost in both upstream and downstream. So we need technologies, we need transfer of knowledge, we need capacity building, we need innovation, we need the young kids working together. We need to educate the school children, because in developed countries, it's upstream, like consumer level or retailer level. So if our kids know, okay, it is possible. So I would say for peace, we need to work on wastage, because German farmers want their food to be exported to the US. US farmers, want their food crops exported to Germany. If we can minimize the crop production, food wastage, then we minimize the carbon dioxide emission. We minimize the uses of water involved. Because, when you waste food, you also waste water. And if you see the numbers, 1/3 of the global food production is wasted. That means 33% almost. So, I was asking this question to the biotechnology people, because there were, people advocating for uses of GMO technologies or biotechnology for production. I was asking them, okay, do you know the numbers of food waste? Why we do not think about it? We have enough land area in this world, but we are not working on minimization of our wastes. We are thinking, and we are now negotiating, okay, Germans need to be lenient. More of the EU certification, or there were questions, even I was amused that one diplomat was asking that, okay, that discussion somehow, I'm not any country, but one diplomat was asking that why there is requirement of labeling, food labeling. And I told, okay, this is the demand of the consumers. You can't just avoid it. People need to know what they are eating. They said, no, the European Union, especially Germans, are so strict on that, because they have their also, what should I say? Yeah, every country would maximize their own interests, because they can't export that much of the strict regulations in Germany. So I asked the German MP that, okay, don't let the other European member states would pressurize you to be more flexible on biotechnology or uses of GMO? And he also avoided that question, because if the US puts a lot of pressure on the EU, then the small member states would say, okay, please, Germans, please, if you do not become flexible, all of us lose and our economies would be in problem. That is one point. The second point I would like to see also is funny, it's also ridiculous. Water conventions, since they are soft laws, we need to look into it. Because the aquifers, as Erin was mentioning, is related. In my country, there is salinization in the agricultural fields. And aquifers are so important, so correlated. Now the rainfall, the amount of rainfall, the excessive farming, excessive water uses is putting a lot of pressure on the agricultural fields. And it is heartening to see that, 1992 UN Water Convention signatory member states, only 50 parties have signed it. You see, out of 200 countries, even my country, I would say Kuram's country, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, no one signed it. Among the EU member states, you would not see many. Germany signed it, although Germany is an upper riparian country, right? Germans could have avoided it, because upper riparian countries always want to take the benefits out of its geographical position. But in our region, we don't have that kind of, UN conventions being signed. And also, if you look into the transboundary water convention or aquifer level convention, no, there are only 26 signatories. That's a small number, 16 signatories, I would say, 16 signatories now until 2023. So those conventions need to be discussed in international level. From my diplomatic perspectives, I would see that, the water conventions are very, very important for food production, for global peace. And I would say that the uses of technologies. And I also attended another conference last week. It's about UNDP report uh, um, on uses of AI and the different countries. This is striking. The inequality due to the advent of our uses of AI is increasing in a geometrical way, right? So the question is how the developed countries would, share or would invest on capacity building on the developing countries, so that survival, then young kids could be motivated to take bad ways of survival. I have people do not, they're included in the society. So I asked many drivers, many Uber drivers, why with university degrees you said, we do not have jobs. So because the government jobs are only for people of some clusters, some part of the society, not for us. Then I understood why Mexican kids are reluctant to go to school. They are more happy to be the victims of cartels. In our part of the world, there is also extremism. There is Hindu extremism, there is Muslim extremism, whatever form it is, right? Buddhist extremism. So it's a difficult region. So when you have inequality, when you do not have access to food, your fields are devastated every year with the floods, then how you get food, how you have peace in your country. So if you compare the data of the German government, they have the data of, armed conflicts in the region for global perspectives. So climate change vis-a-vis the conflicts, armed conflicts. I asked the German government, why don't you include the non-armed conflicts as well, the perception also with the climate change? So we need to also factor that information. And if we do not ensure those together, our discussions would be futile. And at the end of the day, my last point would be European Union, Germany, and the big countries would see people arriving here as please sit together. No one wants to leave their countries. I love to stay in my country, and I can guarantee you, people from Africa, people from developing countries, everyone wants to stay at their home. People do not see other options of survival. They start their journey together. If
a few points also for me, for Germany to take with me on my journey. Thanks a lot, Tanvir, for sharing. I would really much advise you to go for the European level when it comes to peace. That's also the most useful right now when it comes to Gaza and Israel. So the European Union is clearly against the war and says we have to give humanitarian help to Gaza. And Germany alone has not as many options. There are certain historic challenges about it. Why? But the European Union is the peace union. It's built on peace. So if you want to progress there, European right is above German one, even, and it's bigger and it's broader. But it was really insightful, and we have to stop having the food and water waste, right? And being much more conscious about our resources. What do you think about have you heard about the Mercosur agreement?
Yeah, but there were also concerns from Mercosur countries in that discussion of biotechnology. Countries in the Mercosur, they had also concerns that the regulations in Germany would impact their exports to the EU. So, the question, Isabel, is like we do not have consensus among the people, among the scientists. So, people-to-people contacts need to be enhanced. So, if we do not do that, people think that GMO is their, what should I say, salvation, is their, way to survive. But, if we do not have data, if we do not have technology transfer, capacity building, then also the governments of Mercosur would also, put a lot of pressure on the EU and globally. It's a question of survival of humankind, like the uses of GMO, because the debate I was attending last week, the argument was that how people could have conclusive data on uses of GMO or biotechnology for food production, that is it really harmful? How we say that? Do we have data, and how we conclude the food is safe or unsafe? So it's a big debate. So the people in Latin America and Mercosur countries, if they are kind of misguided in this kind of narrative, is it be very difficult, I would say, to protect the soil. I think Yurin would also, agree with me. Once you start production of, GMO crops, then your soil is damaged and it loses its own self. It's a point of no return, I would say, irreversible. Thanks a lot. Yeah.
Aaron, go
Thank you.
ahead.
Yeah. Aaron has some question. Yeah.
It's more of a comment. I think at this conjuncture, we have little but corporatocracies that are running the West. Perhaps this is a global phenomenon, but we have the corporate interests that are so strong and that are pulling strings at all the government levels. And we have the interests of the people who are in direct conflict with the interests of these companies. And I think that that's a really difficult problem to overcome. So we have to figure out how can we, without necessarily exposing what people's agendas are, overcome this reluctance to adopt new practices. And by doing something such as measuring the nutrition within food, which comes directly from the soil and from the amount of biological activity, we can actually drive people to be asking these questions and therefore rejecting the lower quality GMO foods. Because the GMO system is all about extraction. It's all about making money on the seeds. It's about making money on the poisons that get sprayed on the ground, on the fertilizers, which shut down the natural processes. And then, of course, we get sick and we question, well, why are we getting sick? And then we go to the doctor, and who is actually healing us? It's the same companies that made us sick in the first place. I mean, it's a fantastic business model. There's another thing that I want to say, and that is that the subcontinent, so India, Pakistan, they are working so incredibly hard at moving the system, perhaps with other drivers because of the expense of all these synthetics and the GMOs. But they are doing a fantastic job at actually adopting organic practices. So I think that's really important for the West to learn from some of the less developed countries.
Thanks a lot for pointing it out. Tanvir, would you like to respond to Aaron?
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. Yeah, I do agree with Erin that if you look into the data in Bangladesh, yeah, our land, the percentage wise, 50 years back, the amount of land we used to have for cultivation, now is 1/3 almost 1/3 for industrialization, for also, I think the soil nature has changed a lot, but the production has increased without the issues of GMO crops. So we are good examples. Yes, I do agree that, the international seeds company, fertilizer companies, they're so active. They are so active to introduce, to force us to change the course of our policies. But I would say that a country like Germany, need to be more active in our part of the world to promote, the farming that is conducive to the earth, to water, to soil, yeah, and also the human health. And the data also, we need to also develop database because, if we look in the number of cancer patients in the West, it is increasing. We do not have that many deaths because of your health system, but the cost you have, the cost on medical treatments is a lot. If you compare the data, historical data of last 50 years, you would see that the number of cancer patients in the West has increased. In our part of the world, people do not even know that they have cancers. They die. And now, with the uses of modern technologies, we can see the rise of cancer patients in our part of the world as well. So, say, for example, we have issues of arsenic contamination in the water, in the soil. But there is no direct data where you can say that, okay, the arsenic, the heavy metals in the soil, in the water system is causing the cancers and the other, health problems. So that means if we do not have cooperation, do not have collaboration with the West, with a country like Germany, we can't move together. Germany, in the rise of more demand of GMO crops globally with the new US administration, needs partner countries because German scientists, German politicians still would not take that action against their own people. But they need international partners to at least, you know, to at least kind of deter, or I would say that minimize the pressure on Mercosur, on South Asia, on developing countries for uses of GMO crops, those fertilizers, because the corporate interest in our part of the world, we can't escape
Yeah,
it.
but it's coming from Germany. Like we have Bayer. You cannot
Yeah,
imagine how much the corporate
any
interest is in
company.
Germany.
But you
So
have
I
Bear
think Europe
Science,
is
you have
more in
yeah, you
Germany
have
we
also
have Bayer.
yeah, but in its own soil. That's the funny thing, Isabel. If you look into the sales volume of Bayer's crop science, right? Or the German giant, the number one chemical company of the world, right? So if you see the number of sales or volume in developing countries, it's more. Here, the restrictions, the strict laws, they don't enjoy their sales here. That's the problem. One country, having different perspectives, different kind of dual nature kind of trade or, policies.
To
That
be
need to be discussed.
continued, Tanvir, to be
Yeah,
continued. Thank you so much for
thanks a lot.
sharing and get in touch on LinkedIn. I have to turn off my camera now because I'm unfortunately in the hospital and joining in from here, and someone is coming for me. But we have our next speaker here, which is Pranitha from India. Are you with us still? Perfect. Our conservation scientist. Thank you so much for joining in, and we're excited to hear and learn from you.
Thank you so much, Isabel. First, I really hope you feel better. I'm sorry that you're in the hospital. And second, thank you for inviting me today. It's actually been lovely listening to everybody. I've learned so much. A little bit of an introduction. I'm a conservation scientist. I work at the nexus of conservation, communities, and policy. And I lead One Health projects addressing root causes, especially in cases of human-wildlife negative interactions or conflicts. Now, where food security comes into this is India, largely, nearly about 65% of our population are directly dependent on agriculture for their livelihoods, for their security. And being a country that is the most populated in the world, we overtook China in 2023. And now we also have, for the longest time, we have also had some of the most biodiverse, rich hotspots in the country as well. Now, combining those two together, people and wild animals are constantly enmeshed with each other for resources, for space. And lately, given the political climate and given the privatization of wildlife and owning of lands without security to local communities or farmers, there has been an increase in conflicts, but there has not been that much of a mitigation measure. Now, as a country in India, we do have compensatory programs. We do have conflict mitigation programs. If farmers' lands and livelihoods, if their crops, if their cash crops, the crops that they are dependent on are, say, foraged on. I don't like to use the word raided. It is very negative and dismisses the cause and effect. So when wild animals forage on these crops, there are certain programs to mitigate the impacts or to use early warning systems or to have compensation. But this is largely limited to elephants, tigers, leopards, which has been quite recent, but not so much for the other species like wild boars or macaque species, which are monkeys in India. They're very common. And unfortunately, they are considered pests or vermin species. Now, the problem that happens with this is when the wild animals are enough to save, the impact that their actions, which are caused by, again, human behavior, land encroachment, all of that. So the impacts coming from that, which lead to economic loss for farmers, for food security, is not even considered something that needs to be addressed. And nearly 35% of the farmers that we talk about today in India are facing economic losses due to monkey foraging. While the Indian government has completely removed one of the macaque species, the most widely distributed macaque species in India, the rhesus macaques, from the Wildlife Protection Act completely. Now, these monkeys, they're increasing in population. They have been removed from the Wildlife Protection Act of India, which makes it a civic issue. So, how do we really deal with this? How do we protect farmer livelihoods? How do we strengthen livelihood security? And how do we also make sure that conservation happens and is not isolating one or two particular species? So this is where part of my project comes in. So along with One Health, what we are trying to do is using agroecology. We're using urban and social forestry, and we're using human wildlife conflict mitigation as a way to strengthen livelihood security for farmers. Now, because in India, we are very diverse, and I'll try to keep this as short as possible. I know we are a little bit short on time. We're very diverse. The not just our people, their beliefs, religion, culture, but also we are extremely diverse in our kind of terrain, the kind of soil that we have from one part of the country to another. So the kind of plants that grow, the seasons that change, we really cannot apply a one box fits all kind of a solution. So ideally, what we do is every region that there are conflicts in, we always do ground truth. We always conduct data collection procedures. So we not only look at what are the kind of conflicts that are happening, we look at why those conflicts are happening. We look at the trends and patterns. We assess them, and we corroborate them according to seasonal variations, according to tourist footfall, if there is any. We also consider developmental activities that are taking place in and around the area that might have altered or influenced wildlife behavior in a way. And this also includes how much of land has been encroached and whether this land that is being used for agriculture, especially if it's in fringe forest areas, are they from displaced communities? Because this is something that very often happens. A protected area gets declared, and the local communities are simply displaced from the region. They have nothing to fall back on. Their original forms of livelihood are lost. The government has no protection for them. Their rights are not present. So, all of these factors considered. Along with that, we also look at ecosystem health because we need to understand the water quality, we need to understand soil quality. And when we have all of this data, we move into action and planning. Now, this involves people welfare, which is farmers, local communities, everybody who is in that ecosystem. This involves ecosystem welfare, addressing pollution causes. Now, this again depends on the scale of the pollution that is happening. This depends on whether corporates are in the mix, because when corporates are in the mix, pesticides and fertilizers are higher as compared to community forestry. So that is also something we need to consider, which is ecosystem health that helps us assess how we can proceed with the solution. And then we have wildlife health and welfare. Now, all of this combined, our solution would be to focus on restoration. And this is where the ecosystem health and the developmental aspects come in, because we cannot simply blindly go in and say, we are going to restore this place. We need to know the key stakeholders. We need to understand the key factors, and especially political actions that are taking place in the region. Right? Because if there are certain strong political entities who are pro unsustainable development and they are willing to ensure financial stability for local farmers or communities, whatever we do is not going to matter. And that is the unfortunate reality of India as a country today. So we focus on restoration, we focus on urban and social forestry as well, and then we focus on conflict mitigation. Now, conflict mitigation is also the part where habitat management comes in. So restoration is one part of habitat management, but we also understand how can we manage the entire landscape. Now, if we have agricultural lands that have encroached into certain protected areas, can we simply remove people from those lands? How do we ensure the wild animals still have that habitat? So these are a little bit of tricky situations where we tend to use border farming or buffer farming, where we try to first de-escalate the situation. We try to separate the wild animals from foraging on the crops, and then we focus on how to prevent the actual situation from happening. Now, while this is one part of it, the second part is livelihood security in itself. The issue is the middleman. The issue is market value, where the people growing the actual crops, investing their hard work, trying to make ends meet for their family, they earn much lesser than the people in the middle who aren't really putting in the kind of investment that the farmers are, and who aren't actually giving the reality of the situation to the people buying from them, to the consumers. So, especially in COVID, I actually would like to tell a little story. During COVID in India, everywhere schools had to shut down, but the schools that shut down in India, when they did open post COVID, there was a drastic reduction in the number of students who went back to school. And most of them, a major percentage of them, were girls, because the family said they could not. This is still a cultural issue, which a lot of different stakeholders are working on. But the girls were married off because the families couldn't afford to feed them. And the boys are usually pulled out of school. The girls are also still pulled out of school. If they're not married, they're pushed into labor, not as uh, not as something that comes from a malicious intent, but simply because the general opinion or the reality on the ground for a lot of family is that they just cannot afford education and food at the same time for their children. So how do we address this? So we are building kitchen gardens are quite common in India. A lot of NGOs, a lot of organizations are working on this. So what we are also doing is we are building kitchen organic gardens within schools, but especially for fringe communities or forest dependent communities who have been displaced. And this is not just to sustain themselves. Our first idea is to, yes, they do need to sustain themselves. And if the students at least get 1 or 2 meals in the school a day, it takes the pressure off of the family. Now, when it gets good enough that there is more than enough food, then the leftover vegetables, herbs, fruits can be sold, and we can connect these families and these communities or these schools directly to customers and consumers. So we remove the middleman completely, and it sort of becomes a B2C kind of a model. And I do know an NGO. We haven't reached this position yet of seed banks, but I do know an NGO that is working on that. So the kitchen gardens, the organic gardens have become so successful in lands that were previously completely barren that today they have complete seed banks of 40 different species of just eggplant, native eggplant. And these are not invasive species, these are not exotic species. And they are using this to enhance their agriculture. And this in turn enhances livelihood security. When we say all of this, it is so important to understand the kind of value that we give to different species of animals as well. Because when charismatic animals get more funding or more conservation efforts or more policy attention, I am not at all saying that these are efficient. We can definitely do better. We definitely need to do better. But what it also does is, from the non-charismatic species, when there is an increase in economic conflicts, it not just troubles the people, it also threatens the very existence of the wild animals in itself, which innately and inherently just increases the conflict. It escalates economic loss, and nobody is really concerned about it. Because apparently the wild animals are not considered important enough. So obviously the economic losses from them aren't important enough, which does not make sense. So this is where we come in and we do the groundwork. All the capacity building, this isn't just about going to a place and telling somebody, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. This isn't that. This is about strengthening capacity on the ground. And not just for farmers. This is strengthening capacity for policymakers to tell them, listen, hey, this is what is happening. This is what we need to do. And if we provide all these reports and we provide proposals and we say, this is what we need to change. This is why the monkeys need to come back into the Wildlife Protection Act. This is why we need to address displacement of communities that originate from protected areas being declared. It has to be an intersectional welfare approach. Otherwise, in a country like India, it's not going to work. So that is what we are doing. And we hope to expand this project to many other regions across the country in the coming years. And I always believe that collaboration is more important for us today than it ever has been. And I'm always open to collaborations and partnerships. And I will end it here since we are over time. And if anyone has any questions or you want to reach out for partnerships or collaborations, I'm always open to them. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Prantha. Thank you very much. And I appreciate what you are doing. And unfortunately, Isabel has some health issue and is hospitalized. And so I am here and my internet connection is not stable. And so camera is off so that everyone can hear me. And very grateful, everyone. Especially, we started from Dr. Phoebe. She was from UN and very big name. But she's there for address in UN, and then from economy and learning and education. And Erin is still here. I appreciate, and whenever she comes, we always learn. Mr. Tanvir, his huge contribution in environmental pact, and then I also invited many people, but due to this, few were traveling, and Dr. Renuka Thakur has to hear for the partnerships, and Gyantri is a postdoctorate student in Oxford University and researching on water energy nexus, a very knowledgeable and young chap. And in the last, if anyone have any question or anything to ask, they can. And if we to any speaker, please post. I and Isabel shall reach to this speaker and we'll try to find the answer. And all the participants, Dr. Zunaira is here, one Tanvir from Saudi Arabia, and everyone who joined and someone coming and leaving and if they have interest listening. So I'm grateful to everyone. If anyone want to talk about food for peace on climate, please. And Erin, if you want to have any concluding note, please. And I appreciate the patience of everyone.
This is more a question for Pranita. I was working in India in April, May, and working with some of the tribal communities down in the south and with some organic farmers. And one of the issues seems to be the loss of indigenous know-how, especially as children go away, leave the communities and learn and do all these things. They get seduced in a way by modern life, by the access to a telephone, access to videos, YouTube, all this stuff that pollutes our lives. But the consequences, I think, are much graver. And I wonder, how are you addressing that within your local communities? Because I imagine the pressures are the same. You know, we were looking at food production and how to manage incursions of animals to try and figure out some stuff. So have you got any suggestions along those lines?
Yes, absolutely. So just before that, if I get kicked out of this meeting, I will join for my. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry. My laptop just ran out of battery. So thank you so much, Erin. That is a very valid and a very real problem that is happening. So the issue with that is India as a country, we were colonized for 200 years. Now, to come out of that and establish our own ground, just at 76, 77 years, we are very young as a country. Although the development has been happening, the GDP, they say, is increasing. But as a country, with the mindset, with the cultural background, we are very young, right? As a collective um, country. So now, with what you are saying, the problem is everybody sees more value and more economic stability and financial security in moving to an urban place, in having a Western corporate job, because somehow that has started. And that is a colonial mindset. It is a scarcity mindset. It has come, it is the trickle down of the colonial mindset where that is of more value. So, to address that, first we need to bring back the attention and importance on why indigenous or ground work is extremely important to what needs to be done, right? Uh, so, one, value system and value addition. Two, we need to diversify our stakeholders because the general idea is sustainability is expensive. And this is something that my friend was saying today. When someone asked him, why is sustainability expensive? Right? A lot of people pay very well for brands, something that has nothing to do with indigenous knowledge or community based knowledge. So the question isn't why isn't there more value unsustainably cheaper? Right? And that really hit me because that is what we do need to change. And when he said that, it made everything make sense. So to address that would be value system and value addition. And secondly, we have to change how the markets work. We do have to bridge the gap between people looking at how Western forms of profession or working is more uh, made of luxury as compared to a community way of being. Now, when we add value in terms of when we diversify the values, it can be financial value, it can be materialistic value, it can be value in terms of mental health and peace, in terms of how we live with our families and our communities. That is when we can change something. So I think it has to be an incremental process. There really is no one solution for this because the driving factors to why people would want to move away from their community or their indigenous knowledge and culture is very different. So we need to understand as communities what are the driving factors to it. And then we address this. So that would be my take on that.
Thank you very much. And Erin, the email IDs are here. Whenever you want to connect with Parinta and you can connect. And every year we do the 3 events: on the World Water Day, 22nd March, and the World Environment Day, 5th June, and this Peace Day, Food for Peace. And one I read the United Nations slogan that no one left behind. And the word, we all are one. And we see when the different backgrounds, scientists and the people meet and they come up with some solution, and the developed countries, the developing and the underdeveloped, and everyone learn. And it's an open forum, but I say the knowledge and the water carries no religion, no boundary. So whoever will struggle, whoever will strive to learn, dare to learn, will learn and shine. So thank you very much for everyone, and love to have the Galaxy again. Many people, and especially prayers for Isabel, as she's wounded and admitted to hospital. So thank you very much, and we'll meet again in another event next time. Yes, please.
Thanks a lot.
Sir, I just want to give summarize what's the talk today, if everyone is agree with me. My name is Tanveer, and I am water and liberty solution consultant based in Saudi Arabia. And it's really an honor for me to join Food for this event.
Yes.
So together we can turn every drop of water and every grain of food into a step towards less peace. If everyone is agree on it, let us continue to unity, water, food, peace, and humility together for a better tomorrow. For example, just now recently, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan had due to scarcity reason one agreement. So why they are not thinking about the serious factors, the major factors of peace, food, water sector, climate change. They must be signed those type of agreements, not only Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, all over the world. They they have to think about the serious, major serious sectors. This is what I understood today from all over the speakers. So we have to work on it together. Together is why I'm highlighting together, because only one country, one person cannot do anything. Must be together. So this is my opinion only. I just wanted to share with you all, and thank you very much all of your time and for this great platform to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's two Tanveers today, one from Bangladesh and one from Pakistan, residing in Saudi Arabia. And today I could not upload Eastern Asia head of UNESCO. And I will upload this video. His video message was very interesting, but I could not connect. My team could not connect it with the recording with the Zoom. So we shall upload it after the meeting, and the meeting minutes we'll share with everyone, and we'll also this recorded session. So grateful, and anybody can want to say something, please go ahead, and then we close the session. So thank you very much, and Erin, especially thank you. You bear with us, and Phoebe spared the time, and Isabel and Tanveer and everyone who participated in this session. So we'll meet up again. Thank you very much. Take care of all, and goodbye.
Thanks a lot. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, thank you to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.